Hey everyone, it's Jake Hall, the Manufacturing Millennial. We are here back at Automate Live 2023, continuing with some amazing stories on how technology and solutions are changing the way we work as manufacturers and integrators. I have with me Chuck Ridgeway, sorry, the Automation Technology Manager for Horner Automation Group. Chuck, thanks for happening on today.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
So there's a lot of cool stories that we're sharing, but first I want to talk about the 33 years you've had as an experience working for Horner Automation. You know, how did you get into this industry? And just share your insights on how you've seen this industry transform throughout your career.
Right. So, yeah, I guess my career, you could say, is a millennial in its own, right?
Yeah.
You know, because as you said,
the lifespan of a millennial.
Exactly. I've been working at Horner as long as you've been alive, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, when I started, things were, operator interfaces, for instance, were CRT based.
Yeah.
You know, that was high technology. A lot of push buttons, a lot of gauges, that sort of thing. So obviously, and also networking. Maybe 20% of the machines at most would have networking involved.
Yeah.
Now every single application, of course, you've got user interfaces that are way more advanced, a lot more connectivity, not only on the machine, but to the cloud, everywhere else.
Yeah.
Just the advancements have been just incredible over my career, no question about it.
It's shifted the way we work and the way manufacturers work when it's deploying technology.
Right, exactly.
So give us an overview. What is Horner Automation? What do you guys do? And then how are you changing the way manufacturers work?
Right, exactly. So when I started Horner, we were primarily a company that did development for the big PLC manufacturers. So back in those days, most PLC manufacturers had a partner they worked with to do like third-party modules and those sorts of things. The modules, they didn't think there was enough volume to justify their development time. That's what people like us did. So we worked with GE Fanuc primarily.
Yeah.
And we were their kind of development arm. And then over time, the PLC manufacturers decided they wanted to do more and more of it. So we kind of found our own niche.
Yeah.
All right, so the first time we developed our own PLC type technology was in the late 90s with the US Post Office. They were looking for a small PLC that they could use for distributed control on conveyor systems, but at that time the only PLCs that had networking capability were, Slick 500s and GE 9030s, mid-sized PLCs, and there's no way they could afford that sort of cost for a network type solution. So we developed, effectively a small PLC that could run a section of conveyor that had CAN networking built into it, that they could use, and literally on one, section of this high-speed conveyor system, you'd have literally, a couple hundred of these PLCs all daisy chained together over CAN networking. So that's kind of how we got started.
Yeah.
And then our owner had this brilliant idea. He said, we spent a lot of work as application engineers making the PLC talk to the operator interface, talk to the network, and talk to the I/O before we can even make the machine do anything. So what if we integrated all those components into one component with one software package? It would really make things easier for OEMs especially, and of course end users as well. So that's kind of where we've been headed with things.
So what I'm kind of hearing just from the stories that you're sharing with the post office and some more case studies that we're going to get to in a minute, it sounds like you are really adapting and growing when a customer brings, hey, we need to address this problem, and you design products around that. How is technology changing in terms of, we've seen, I guess, over the last 5 years, let's put a placemaker in it, but over the past 5 years, how is technology really moving the features and capabilities forward when it comes to what the demand is from end users?
Right, exactly. So there's a couple things that have happened, right? We've all talked about Industry 4.0. That's a big thing, of course, getting more machines, more data, where it needs to go, of course. That's one's pretty obvious and talked about a lot. Another thing that's changed, of course, is end users are much more tech savvy than they were. Okay, just because they're carrying around cell phones with them all day long. And they have expectations for the types of user interface they deal with on a daily basis. They're looking for that sort of functionality, when they're interfacing with a piece of automation equipment. So, the days of, the user interface being 10 years behind what computers are doing, maybe, that's not acceptable anymore. They're looking for much more advanced type capabilities in their user interface, as an example.
So Chuck, when companies are out there, and let's just say they're very much in the brownfield state. They've really never leveraged automation the way they should be.
Sure.
What are some steps that you can say when you're looking at automation solutions and deploying them? These are the type of features that you should be looking for to make it so, from the experience that you've had, to make them more productive, and I guess more, I could say, building a better foundation to grow on for years to come.
Right, absolutely. So one of the things I would say is they should really look to, and even though we're automating things to eliminate operators to a certain extent, at least for certain tasks that are difficult for operators to do, where you still have an operator involved, you really should be focused on, really empowering that operator. Give them the type of tools they need so they can do their job better, and also so that the machine can help them report what's really happening, for instance, at a work cell.
To get that visualization of what is happening.
Exactly, and also to communicate clearly with their superiors, why are we not being as productive at this work cell? We spent, 17% of the shift waiting on material. We had a minor breakdown here, but I had to wait, 42 minutes for, help with getting that started again. And it's not a scenario, especially when you're talking about embedding OEE type tools, efficiency type tools maybe in your automation, that empowers the operator. It's no longer Big Brother saying, well, this machine isn't being productive, this operator's in charge of this machine, so it's the operator's fault. It's a case of being able to communicate that information clearly so that they know the steps that need to be taken to improve the efficiency and get the most out of their equipment.
So a lot of manufacturers have equipment that's 20, 30, 40 years old in a lot of cases. How are you helping companies modernize? Like when you have a PLC that's on the floor for the past 35 years, that obviously has been manufactured for the last 15, it's completely out. How are you helping companies say, listen, we're going to remove the risk that you have from downtime? If that breaks, listen, good luck finding a part. How are you helping companies, de-risk their manufacturing processes?
So one thing I can say is that, we primarily, a big part of our market is selling to OEM machine builders, right? And we have been doing this since the late 90s. And we're about in our 5th or 6th generation of product. So I can say for sure that for the Horner controlled machines that are out there, the same software basics from the late 90s and early 2000s, if you have one of our controllers you installed in, say, 2000, about the time you were born, you could reuse all the logic in that controller, right? You don't have to start from scratch necessarily. Now, to take advantage of some of the new capabilities, you're going to add all kinds of extra things like data logging and more advanced user interface and all those sorts of things. But you're starting at least with the basic machine logic that's been running fine for the last 20 years. And literally, you can use that logic exactly as it is if you want.
You have a choice. You have a choice.
Or you can convert that to a more modern variable-based approach. Still the same basic logic, but that's a 5-minute conversion and away you go.
So I want to shift topics a little bit and just talk about some of the case studies that you guys have worked on over there. Because, I was on your website, I was looking at stuff. You guys have worked on some pretty cool projects and large projects, for that matter. So the Lucas Oil Stadium is one that comes into mind. But could you share some other stories of how, you have worked with organizations or companies or facilities to help automate processes and kind of that journey along the way?
Sure. So one of the customers we've had over the years has done a lot of stadium projects, and those are always fun to talk about. We've had another OEM that has done a lot of work on fountains. So the Bellagio fountains, for instance, has a lot of Horner content, for instance. That's awesome. Pretty cool stuff. We also have some, the train at the Houston Astros Stadium that comes out every time they hit a home run. That's all controlled by a Horner OCS. And that is a good example of a retrofit. So that one went in place maybe early 2000s with our first generation Horner controller, still text-based operator interface. A few years ago, they wanted to do an upgrade, They replaced it with a much more modern controller with a touchscreen, but they reused all the same logic. They were back up and going in no time.
That wasn't like the trash can hitting the strike zone upgrade, was it?
No, it wasn't that one. No. It wasn't part of that scandal whatsoever. I can say that. I can say that with a lot of...
You guys were not involved with
No,
with
we
that
were not
situation.
involved, exactly.
As a Cubs fan, I had to bring it up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. So there's a couple of different examples there. But we've also done some fun applications. We have a current OEM that is in the ag industry.
Yeah.
And they're not a huge company, but they're growing rapidly. And their whole thing is about the health of dairy calves. So they've built equipment which has, and I won't go into any of the details, but effectively with their equipment, they can take a dairy calf, which would have a 4% chance of dying early because of its lack of immunity. They can improve that by like 3 or 4 times. So now there's less than 1% chance that newly born calf is going to, have a problem that's going to cause it to die because of that. So some really interesting stuff all over the place.
So for the manufacturers and the systems integrators who are listening to this conversation, what do you want to communicate to them and saying these are the things that you want to look out for?
Sure.
When it comes to, or these are the type of offerings that we can create to make your life easier.
Exactly. So one of the things that we do, we're not Rockwell or Siemens, right? Those are great companies. They make great products. We're a $80 million company, so we've got some pretty good size, but we're not that size of those guys. But we can provide them with, the type of products that will do some things that the big guys aren't interested in necessarily. We really tightly integrate the hardware, one software package, one hardware piece to work with. It can fit in a lot smaller footprint as well. So that's another thing that makes their life easier.
Panel size density.
Panel size, much smaller, exactly. You don't necessarily need as big of a panel for that. And we're always looking at ways that we can, especially for OEMs, ways that we can work with them individually to find their specific issues. And we're small enough that we can very often do some things a little bit custom so they get a custom off-the-shelf type solution. So that's really what we're looking at.
So let's pull off the sheet, open up the crystal ball, and let's predict where we're going to be. Where do you see the type of solutions that you're deploying in the industry?
Right.
Where's this industry going to be at in 1 to 2 years? What technology are companies going to be looking for, needing on their factory floor?
Right.
And then how are you going to help solve those needs?
Sure. So I want to look at beyond just the factory floor too, because even though we do a lot of factory applications, of course, we do a lot outside of the factory. I mentioned ag. We're also doing a lot more with mobile, those sorts of things. So one thing I think that we're seeing is that we're starting to utilize some technology, let's say from the automotive industry and from the mobile industry in applications that traditionally would have just used factory automation products and to great benefit. So that's definitely something that you're going to see, taking advantage of some of the lessons that the automotives have learned about noise immunity and putting a lot of products in a small space in a really rough environment, both environmentally and electrically. We're trying to take advantage of that for our customers, not just the ones that are out in the environment as well, but also the ones in the factory. So some of that, you're going to see more overlap, I think, in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chuck, as we kind of wrap up our conversation, are there any topics that you wish we would have covered, or is there anything that you kind of want to mention just as a high-level takeaway, or maybe more detailed, that you want to speak to we have the audience?
Right, sure. So one thing I would say is, like a lot of companies, the big guys included, we have a highly programmable product, right? And it takes some expertise in order to program that product. We're doing a lot of things to try and help with the learning curve for new adopters and those sorts of things. But one thing that we are offering now, and we're doing this very carefully because we have a lot of system integrator customers that we want to participate with, but we are starting to offer some solutions. Where in a box you can get an OEE type solution for machine efficiency that you can bolt to the side of your machine and very quickly get all that efficiency information. We've put together a package of a 4-channel replacement for a chart recorder. So those old circular chart recorders that are older than both of us can be replaced with some more modern equipment. Tank level monitoring, those sort of things. So some simple solutions that customers that don't have the programming expertise can just take and use. And in those scenarios where they need a little more than that, then they can work with the local system integrators and get that extra capability built in.
So Chuck, if people want to learn more about Horner Automation,
right.
where do they go?
Go to HornerAutomation.com. We also have a tremendous number of videos on the Horner APG YouTube channel. Horner APG is our parent division.
Okay, awesome. Well, Chuck, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for sharing the insights and your passion I could just see for the past 33 years on this growing industry. And we'll catch everyone real soon.
Awesome. Thank you.